Today we're going to talk about dynamic microphones. We're going to get into what they are, how they work, and which ones I would personally recommend. So to get started, what is a dynamic microphone? Simply put, they're rugged mics commonly used in live sound. They can also be used in studio settings, but you are far more likely to see them in a live sound setting. So, what is a dynamic microphone? Now, Merriam-Webster defines them as a microphone in which the sound waves cause a movable wire or coil to vibrate in a magnetic field and thus inducing a current. This process is called electromagnetic induction. Now that sounds very confusing, but we will cover that later on. Let's cover some basics before we jump into that. There are three main types of microphones. There's dynamic, condenser or capacitor, and ribbon. And the difference between these basically is how these microphones operate or how they transduce acoustic energy into electrical energy. So you'll see dynamic microphones operate off of a principle called electromagnetic induction, also referred to as moving coil. Condenser or capacitor mics operate off of variable capacitance. Ribbon mics operate off of electromagnetic induction as well, except those microphones use a very, very fragile ribbon. So where would I typically see these mics? Studio mics. You are likely to find condenser mics and ribbon mics in the studio setting. The reason being is these microphones are far more fragile than dynamic microphones. Very easy to break. Another feature of these is they're great at capturing higher frequencies and quieter sounds. So these mics are great if you're in a studio recording vocals, a voiceover, instruments. You really want that attention to detail captured where you're in a controlled acoustic environment. Another detail about condenser mics is they require power. Now, live sound mics. You are more likely to find dynamic mics in a live sound setting. Occasionally, you may find a condenser microphone while working in live sound, but it's not as common. So, dynamic microphones are considered to be more rugged. They're great at capturing loud, strong sounds. They do not require power. And then I mentioned here, if you do have a condenser mic in a live sound setting, it will require power. So that's, if you're running a soundboard, you'll see plus 48V. That's also known as phantom power. Basically, you hit that button and you power that condenser microphone. And the reason I say that dynamic microphones are more rugged is I'm sure we've all been to a concert where you see the vocalist take the microphone by the cable, swing it around. You've seen bands drop microphones, put them out into the crowd. Things happen, mic stands fall over. It's a very chaotic environment at times. So these microphones are built to withstand that environment. Now let's get into polar patterns. There are three basic types of polar patterns. We have omnidirectional, unidirectional, also called cardioid, bidirectional, also called figure eight. So what the heck does any of that mean? Let's break it down from this photo I got off of ehomerecordingstudio.com. So as you'll see, the three basic microphone polar patterns I listed are pictured above. The first one, omnidirectional, you'll see that red circle. Bidirectional or figure eight, you'll see the two blue circles. And cardioid, you'll see that kind of upside down heart, the green one. So now let's see what he wrote here. Mic 1 has an omnidirectional pattern, meaning the entire red area is equally sensitive to sound. What this means, if you have a microphone that's omnidirectional, it's going to pick up sounds from all over. Omni, think circle, think all around. That microphone will capture any noise around it. Microphone number 2 has a figure 8 pattern, meaning the 2 blue areas on the front and back are sensitive while the sides are ignored. So again, these microphones would pick up from the front and back, the sides would be dead. Microphone 3 has a cardioid pattern, meaning the green area in the front of the mic is most sensitive, and the sides are less sensitive, and the rear is ignored. Now let's get into what is actually happening when a dynamic microphone is working. So this is where we get into magnetic induction. So let's break this down. A coil of wire is located inside of the magnet. So if you can see right here, a coil of wire is located inside of the magnet right here. The sound waves, coming from the vocals or an instrument, cause the diaphragm to vibrate, thus moving the coil. So you'll see right here, this arrow points to this right here, which is the diaphragm, or the cone of the mic. And the coils are attached to that, ever so slightly. When somebody sings into a microphone, this diaphragm right here is going to move, hence moving the coils in and out of the magnet. When the coil moves, an electric current is produced. From here, you plug in an amplifier, which takes the signal and amplifies it. So again, to recap, someone may be singing into this microphone. The diaphragm will move, moving the coils in and out of the magnet. This is called induction. That movement creates an electric current. And then from there, you plug it into an amplifier, which will take that sound and amplify it. Now let's get into great dynamic microphones for vocal mics, guitar, drum, bass, and we'll start off with vocals. So these are all my personal preferences. I'll start by saying that. So dynamic vocal microphones. First off the bat, I highly recommend the Shure SM58 mic. They are a cardioid mic, and they're a vocals go-to. Now, if you have a bit more money to spend and you're looking to buy a dynamic microphone that might have a bit of a better frequency response, I highly recommend the Telefunken M80. It's a super cardioid mic, commonly used for vocals, and people often say it has condenser-like qualities, basically meaning it does a really good job picking up details without losing any information. And a fun little fact about the Telefunken M80 series, as you can see, they offer a wide variety of colored mics if that's what you're into. From here, dynamic guitar microphones. So another big contender in the game, similar to the Shure SM58, is the Shure SM57. These are basically the same mics. Cardioid, often used on guitar. You can use it on acoustic or amps. And it's, again, another go-to mic in live sound. From here, another mic I recommend is the Sennheiser E609. It's a super cardioid used on guitar amps, and it has excellent clear sounds. It's often known to pick up guitar amps without giving you any mud, really. And as you can see in this Sweetwater photo, these mics are super convenient because you can drape them over an amp. Now, just a reminder, if you're going to do this, make sure you're actually pointing it off axis of a cone. Next up, dynamic bass amp microphones. So again, the Shure SM57 is a great go-to. And then next up, we have a AKG, that's supposed to say AKG D112. There is no 3 in that name. The AKG D112 is actually a kick drum mic, or at least it was designed with the intention of being a kick drum mic. However, its excellent low frequency response makes it a wonderful mic to use on any bass amp. And then now this isn't a microphone, but I have to mention there's nothing wrong with taking a direct line out from a bass amp. If you're in a pinch and you don't have another mic, or you just don't have a mic that's going to work well, use a direct line out from the amp itself. So next up is dynamic drum kit set microphones. So off the bat, I recommend the Sennheiser E600 drum kit series. These microphones do an overall great job. Personally, my only recommendation would be to swap out the kick drum mic with something else. The kick drum mic here is great. It still will get the job done. Personally, I don't favor the sound as much as I do other microphones. So down here I wrote kick replacements. I'd recommend the AKG D112, that mic we just saw on the last slide, or Shure Beta 52A, or the Telefunken M82, which is actually pictured right here. And then another replacement I like to recommend is the snare drum replacement. Odds are, if you use these microphones, your drummer may end up whacking one of the mics with his stick, because these microphones clip onto the drums. So the toms, floor toms, they clip right on, and the snare. So, if you have a drummer that is known to or if you have a drummer that's more prone to hit the microphones, it's good to have a Shure SM57 as a backup snare drum mic. You may even want to just start with that. One thing I should mention is those two mics on either side of the Sennheiser kick drum mic are both condenser microphones, meaning they will need power. So if you're looking at a soundboard, that's why you'll see that plus 48V button, which is your phantom power. You just hit that button on both channels and it will power the microphones. And then the next kit I recommend, or the next microphone set I recommend, is the Telefunken DD5. Again, I am a huge fan of Telefunken mics almost across the board. As you can see before, I did recommend using this kick drum mic anyways. Just such a wonderful punchy sound. Telefunken mics are great with capturing dynamic range. I've never had an issue with any of these mics sounding too muddy. I highly recommend almost any Telefunken mic. So that is a basic overview of dynamic microphones. When using any microphone, it's important to remember the polar pattern and frequency response to really be able to match it up to whatever instrument you're using. Again, I will say, if you're in a live sound setting and you're dealing with dynamic microphones, a great go-to for almost anything is a Shure SM58 and Shure SM57.